All right, here it is, trigger point annihilation. I want to walk you through what we would do in all my classes. The first thing I'm going to do is get to know my students a little bit, let them get to know me. We'll do an overview of the course. We'll do an opening blessing and just take some time and space to make sure that we're ready to receive into our hands and heart the body work. And then jumping into a connection exercise. And just working on being able to feel or feeling in the tissues just to get everybody warmed up. And then we're going to move into looking at, well, what is a trigger point? What is it? What's it commonly described as? What do different people think that it is? How do they work? Getting into what the client's sensation of a trigger point is going to be like. How are they going to describe it to you? Talking about what they feel like underneath your hands. Spending some time delving into that. And then we're going to look at the etiology of trigger points. What's being said about them? Where do they come from? There's a lot of different theories out there. There's a lot of people selling packages about, like, hey, this is what they come from. Give me $50, I'll show you how to get rid of them. And then there's the looking at, could it be from something else? Have we been creating something here that's maybe not exactly everything that they say it is? And I know I'm being kind of vague here. Let's put it this way. I don't necessarily agree with what's out there when it comes to trigger points. And what I learned when I went to massage school years ago, it doesn't really agree with what I'm finding in clients' bodies. And I believe that I've stumbled upon an answer for trigger points, an answer that works 100% of the time. And I found that in core alignment therapy. And so what this workshop is going to do is it's going to unfold where the trigger points come from, and that's imbalances in the bony structure of the body, which affects the muscles, which affects the nerves, which creates some of these trigger points or holding patterns. So I'm really excited about unveiling this to people. Then what we're going to do is look at what are the current treatment methods. We'll look at what people are doing with body work. We'll look at what they're doing in the physical therapy field. We'll look at what's the medical field have to say about trigger points. What's the nutritional field saying about trigger points? How can we help release inflammation and release some of these things? So it's going to be a holistic approach, but then we're going to narrow in and really zoom in on core alignment therapy and some of the other techniques that I'm using that are working 100% of the time. And yes, I did say 100% of the time. So then we're going to go into the trigger point release technique methodology. And really that's a whole bunch of words to say we're getting rid of the pain. We're getting rid of the holding pattern. And so what are we going to do? We're going to talk about the Fibonacci spiral. How in the world can the Fibonacci spiral have anything to do with body work? It has everything to do with core alignment therapy. It's mystical how it works. It's taking something in the direction that it wants to go and then spiraling around and releasing the pain by allowing the bony structure, the muscle, everything to settle back where it needs to go, back into balance. Going to teach people about vibration and how that can help to break down the trigger point pain holding pattern. We're going to use proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, PNF, and learn how to use that to break down a trigger point, and some specialized massage techniques that I've come up with and how all of those things work together. So that's going to be a large portion of the training. That part on its own is just the trigger point release technique, all the different methodologies. That's about an hour and a half. Then we're going to go into vibration a little deeper for about 60 minutes while we're still applying some of those other techniques that have just been learned. And 30 minutes for a trigger point demo. I'll pull somebody from the audience and actually go through working on the trigger point, and we're going to give people the chance to pull all of this together as we head into the core alignment therapy portion of this, where we're going to be demoing and practicing the bony tissue palpation. We'll move right into the manual assessment technique, which has a lot to do with the core connection technique that I teach in the very beginning. We're going to look at the parts of the whole philosophy and how a lot of times when people commonly work on trigger points, they just get all into that one spot. They're trying to work that spot out. And that's not necessarily what's needed. A lot of times what we need is to focus in on an area, and it might be connected to something on the anterior side of the body instead of the posterior. So lots of things to think about there. We'll look at common trigger point zones and holding patterns and how we can affect those areas very easily. We'll do the hands-on, put it all together, and then move into the conclusion, where we'll do question and answer, review, closing blessing, and of course a course eval, so that everyone who's present can help me get better at sharing this life-changing and healing information with a world that's hurting. Thanks so much. That's it for Trigger Point Annihilation.